Thank you. President Congress, Dave Penman, General Secretary of the FDA, moving motion 33, Standards in Government. Congress, this motion is perhaps a little more prescient than expected when we submitted it many months ago. We've just seen a weekend of high political drama born out of this very issue. In many ways, what we've witnessed this week was the upholding of the high standards expected of our political leaders. Sir Laurie Magnus, the independent adviser on ministers' interests, stated in his letter to the Prime Minister that Ms Rayner had acted with integrity and with a dedicated and exemplary commitment to public service. She made a mistake, and as a minister she recognised that and ultimately took full responsibility for it. Politics is a brutal and unforgiving world. Sir Laurie Magnus's letter setting out the circumstances of his decision gives insight to what that means in reality for a politician. And let's face it, Congress, politicians like Angela Rayner face a relentless attack, not just on what they say, but how they dress, how they speak, and how they spend their time away from politics. But as Angela Rayner acknowledged herself in her letter of resignation, those who hold public office must always observe the highest standards. In his letter accepting that resignation, the Prime Minister says, "As you know, we acted in accordance with the strengthened system related to ministerial conduct that we put in place in coming into government." He's right in a way. They have strengthened the rules. But in reality, the changes made since Labour came to power had no bearing here. This was a minister referring themselves to scrutiny, because when they make mistakes, that's what ministers with integrity do. The issue at hand and what our motion seeks to address is not when ministers or the Prime Minister act with integrity. It's what happens when they don't. When Priti Patel, the then Home Secretary, was found guilty of bullying civil servants, including shouting and swearing at junior civil servants, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the day, sat on the report for 6 months. When forced to publish it, he refused to act on the evidence, despite knowing it would lead to the resignation of his ethics adviser. Nothing Labour has done since they came to power would stop that from happening again. Decisions on the ministerial code remain entirely in the Prime Minister's gift. It is the Prime Minister who determines guilt or innocence, not the independent adviser on minister standards. He or she does exactly what it says on the tin, advises. That's fine when we have a Prime Minister who will act on the evidence. But it's a system that relies essentially on shame being a determining factor. What happens, as we have seen in the past, when the Prime Minister can't be shamed? When naked political interest trumps, and I use that term deliberately, all ethical considerations. Labour's promised Ethics and Integrity Commission is merely a reshaping of the existing standards framework, with a few small tweaks. The Advisory Committee on Business Appointments may be gone and few will mourn its passing, but it wasn't the committee that was the problem, it was the lack of powers of enforcement. Apart from the risk of losing ministerial redundancy pay, there's been little change to those powers. We don't have to imagine what a government led by a populist politician with no moral compass looks like. We've already lived through it. We need a standards regime that relies on statute and independent decision-making, not precedent and the good chap principle. And whilst no government can bind a future one, it can make it more difficult to unpick a statutory and independent process for holding those in political office to account for their conduct. And this is not just about ministers' conduct. Nigel Farage already has his sights set on impartial civil service. He's already cosplaying a battle where the Reform government would be blocked by the civil service from delivering their agenda. He's softening up the public for an attack on one of the key principles that underpin our system of government, a politically impartial civil service. The Civil Service Code binds civil servants to a statutory obligation to act with integrity, honesty, objectivity and impartiality. Civil servants must be recruited on the basis of merit through open and fair competition, not handpicked by ministers. So whilst there's a statutory underpinning to the code, the regulator, the Civil Service Commission, has little powers of enforcement. Again, all roads lead to the Prime Minister. Congress, there should be low-hanging fruit for the Labour government. It's not about cost, it's about policy and legislation. And I'm at a loss to understand why they have not gone further. But whatever the reason, there is no stronger platform to create a binding framework for high standards than from a government whose instinct is to act that way voluntarily. Conference, I move.